In this video, I'm talking about how our feelings are generated by the meaning we're giving it and why understanding this is so important.
This is how legends are made.
Episode, I want to talk about the meaning we give things and actually how much of an influence it has on our feelings. And this kind of came about from a conversation I had very recently where someone was saying that the way they were feeling was based on how someone was treating them. It was that they felt that the way it was said or how it was being said was making them feel undermined in some form, that they weren't being valued. Now, it was really interesting as they were talking about the scenario and obviously revolving around and around, wrapping around again and again the details of this particular exchange, this discussion they were having. But what was coming from that was that between her and the other person, it was that the feeling she was getting of insecurity or feeling was being undermined and expectation from the other person to have not behaved that way was generating a whole lot of emotion that was difficult to navigate. So it was important as a process to actually, one, slow all that thinking down. Now, I know I've mentioned in the past that we have our internal monologue, but I don't think we realize how fast that's processing. It's going a lot quicker than we realize, even if it feels normal speed to us as we kind of consciously think about it. Is actually going a lot faster. So when we're having a conversation, it's really about slowing it down and identifying each particular point. So this scenario was where a colleague was kind of interrupting, or to the lady's belief, interrupting a conversation that she was having with another colleague and adding information that had already been shared. So she was feeling undermined by this colleague's kind of, in her mind, interference. So I had to slow down each particular point. And the first one I went for was, is this actually true? Not the conversation, that actually happened, but the result of it. Was it that the other colleague didn't respect her as much? Was it that the person she'd originally talked to now not respect her anymore? Was it that they weren't coming to them with the problems they previously had? Had anything changed? And she said, no, she didn't think so. The person she'd spoken to and was talking to before she was interrupted was equally as respectful and as trusting and as accommodating as before. And I said, okay. So slowing that down for a second, whilst you're feeling something based on the interference or the other colleague coming into, as your version was, to interfere, it isn't actually playing out. It isn't a reality. So the first thing to challenge is, does this actually happen? Does the person walk away actually feeling those things? And in this case, that it wasn't true from what the lady could give me. And that was good enough. What the person could give me, that was good enough. So we break it down. So, okay, so we're removing that other colleague and we're left now with the person who's interfering and yourself. It's really interesting to notice that how we interpret something creates that feeling. The meaning we're giving the exchange or how it's been said is creating the feeling. From everything the lady was talking about, it was saying that she never believed her colleague, who was in her mind interfering, was in any intention to undermine or create any of those kind of things, any of those kind of concerns. So we challenged that perception. And so what was left in the middle of this was her and the meaning she was giving the exchange. But what was curious was how deep that feeling went. And she got very upset, very emotional as she was talking about it. And it's not because the moment the exchange happened. It's the meaning she was giving it. Now, the meaning would have been derived from, would have been sourced from some event in her past, in her personal history, where she had some exchanges of this kind of quality, this kind of nature, which left her feeling incapable or criticized or undermined in some form. So I drew to their attention that it wasn't the colleague, it was the history playing its part in the present. After an emotional kind of calming time and how to recognize this, She recognized that actually it wasn't the person she was talking to, but some history that related to it. And even at that point, she couldn't recognize what it was, but she understood that it had some history. I asked her to take herself into the future, that when she would have the situation happen again, did she feel that she would interact with her colleague in the same way? Would she see it as being an undermining thing? Would she feel that she wasn't being trusted? And she said no. She wouldn't be seeing it the same way. She would know that it was her sourcing this history and bringing it into the present. And she would know that it wasn't her colleague at all, but everything to do with her. And with that awareness, that acknowledgement, the change had already happened. She couldn't go into that scenario now thinking the same things now with her knowledge that she had. So I kind of highlight this idea with a real practical example that when we get upset over things, it is absolutely the meaning we're giving it that is actually creating that feeling. And that feeling can be sourced from parts of our history that it's coming back into the present. The sooner we can recognize that, the sooner we're able to actually create some change and recognize that it's not the environment or the people we're interacting with or whatever scenario that it is. It's all to do with us. And once we can attend to that, we can create the change we're after, look at it a different way. So notice, become aware, become curious to your emotions. When you find there's a heightened emotion, when you're particularly upset with someone's behavior, have a moment to actually check in and wonder, is it really the situation? Is it really actually playing out as I think it has? Or is it actually just me and the meaning I'm giving this based on some sort of event or events in my personal history? If you can get to that spot, I think you'll find you might interact in a different way, maybe more understanding of the situation, and actually be less burdened by these kind of feelings. So I'll leave that with you and take some time to think about it for the next couple of days. As always, drop me a comment if you like, and I'll catch you next time.
This is how legends are made.